Welcome to Marvel Month on SpeterTV, and what better way to start off Marvel Month than by talking about my favorite Marvel character? The Big Wheel! I mean, of course, wait, is that him? Is that him? Is he, okay, really. Spider-Man. After years of fans hoping and dreaming for the day that Spider-Man would be able to join the MCU, Marvel and Sony finally came to a deal in 2015 to allow that to happen. And of course, fans everywhere rejoiced. We'd finally have a fully accurate version of Peter Parker and Spider-Man. But jump cut to today, 3 appearances in, with at least another one on the way this year. And this Spider-Man, despite being pretty well received, is not universally well received. In fact, some serious fans are pretty disappointed. Now, Tom Holland in himself seems to be pretty well liked pretty much universally from my observation. I don't think too many people have a problem with him as Peter Parker and Spider-Man. But some people certainly have a problem with how his character has been written. One big example is his over-reliance on Iron Man. Some people even call him Iron Boy. Tony Stark made his suit, gave him an AI much like his own suit, he gave him another suit. He's a pretty powerful benefactor for a character who typically gets a lot of relatability out of being, well, broke, smart, and self-made. And most of the technical work that this Peter Parker has done to get to where he is has only really been glossed over. We know he made his web shooters, we know he manipulated some lenses to keep his senses at bay. To be able to do this stuff, he clearly has to still be a genius in this version, but it's not really focused on enough to really feel like he's a genius. And it hasn't really felt like he'd have his normal money problems with Tony Stark around. The portrayal of Peter's friends and peers around him has left a lot of fans feeling unsatisfied. Some people felt that Michelle was unfunny and unnecessary, and then for her to say that her friends call her MJ, okay, she doesn't have any friends, and so is this Mary Jane now? Because she doesn't seem like Mary Jane at all. And if she's not, why would you feel the need to call her MJ? And if you were going to do just a straightforward MJ, Zendaya would have been a great choice. So one movie in, this character is just sort of confusing right now. Then you have Flash, who, yeah, looks totally different, but people don't really see him as any sort of an intimidating bully. He's popular, I guess, but it seems like maybe just because he's rich and, well, I guess because he's rich. Doesn't seem like people really like him that much, but they sort of just tolerate him. I think a lot of fans accept that modern day bullying doesn't have to be physical, but what Flash does doesn't really seem effective too much, at least not in the case of Peter. Peter's sort of bothered by him, but not really to the extent that a lot of fans would expect. And then Betty Brant looks like Gwen Stacy for no apparent reason. And she's usually older, but whatever. And then you have Ned, who some people love him, some people hate him. Either way, he's really not the Ned Leeds from the comics, and he's definitely Miles Morales' friend Genki. Like, pretty clearly. They essentially took Miles' best friend and gave him to Peter, and pretty much his school too. And then you have Aunt May, who is clearly very different from the normal, but I haven't heard a whole lot of complaints about her. And then you, so far, really don't have Uncle Ben. Peter says that May's been through a lot lately, seemingly talking about Uncle Ben's death, but not specifically saying it. Peter tells Tony that when bad things happen and you can stop it and you don't stop it, blah blah blah. Great power, great responsibility without actually saying it. So sure, it seems like he had this conversation with somebody, maybe. Again, not really said. We see that Peter has Ben's suitcase in Far From Home, which really acknowledges him for the first time specifically. And no one really wanted to watch Uncle Ben die again, but it really feels weird to see Spider-Man and not have him actually say Uncle Ben's name ever. It really makes you have to guess and assume what drives this version of the character, other than wanting to be an Avenger and impress Tony Stark. Like, all it really would have taken is a couple more sentences. Like, you don't need a flashback or anything. And then you have some issues with him as Spider-Man. Some fans think he's too clumsy even for being this young. He's too wide-eyed even for being this young. Peter, even in his youth, has always had some sort of maturity about him that some people don't really feel from this version. Like, how many times does this version say, "Whoa," or "That's so cool," or "Awesome"? He's pretty constantly starstruck at this point. His quipping even is more observational rather than adversarial. And yeah, we know that they have plans to grow this version of the character from being so childlike to more and more of an adult and a leader. But it feels like they sort of took their own version of a young Spider-Man as opposed to all the examples of a young Spider-Man we had before. And we know why there are so many changes that they felt like they had to make. Spider-Man's been done to death already. No one really wants to see the same thing again. No one wanted to see another origin story. no one wanted to see Uncle Ben die again. There's so many great Spider-Man villains that have not been on the screen yet. No one wants to see Green Goblin again right now. They clearly had to make changes, but I think it's fair to wonder if they made all of the right changes. And if they develop this version of the character into something that feels a little more faithful to other versions that a lot of people love, will these changes feel worth it for the people who don't like them? I really don't know. Me personally, I like a number of the changes, I guess, more than a lot of people seem to. And the things that I have problems with, I'm pretty much either on a wait and see sort of thing with, or I just don't care enough to get all worked up about it. That's just sort of how I am, I guess. But hey, thank you so much for watching. Like this video if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it. Subscribe if you're new, hit the notification bell to let your speeder sense tingle when I upload. Let me know what you think about the MCU's version of Spider-Man. And I will see you next week.